I stood in the back of my son's wedding, straightening my tie, expecting a simple thank you. Instead, he raised his glass and said, "To Richard, the man who raised me." My breath caught. Richard wasn't me. I was his biological father. But in that moment, I realized biology had nothing to do with fatherhood. I spent 30 years building a reputation in the financial world. Corner office, seven-figure deals, private jets. I gave him everything money could buy, except for the one thing he needed most: my time. I missed first steps, first heartbreaks, first everything. I was too busy chasing titles while another man showed up for bedtime stories and scraped knees. I used to believe there would always be time to fix it. One more call, one more visit. But hearing those words at the altar shattered that illusion. I wasn't his dad anymore. I was just a guest. But what came next changed everything. If you've ever put career before family, don't blink. This story might be yours. My name is John Carter, and I've spent most of my life trying to outrun the shadows of my childhood. I grew up in a rusted-out town in Pennsylvania where the mill shut down before I learned to ride a bike. My father died in a factory fire when I was 7. My mother worked double shifts as a waitress and still came home too tired to talk. We weren't just poor, we were invisible. I remember lying in bed, listening to her cough from cigarette smoke and stress, and thinking, when I grow up, my family will never have to struggle like this. That single thought propelled me like rocket fuel through high school, then a scholarship to Northwestern, and eventually into the world of high-stakes finance. Wall Street was brutal, but I was hungrier than the rest. I started as an analyst, the first to arrive, last to leave. 16-hour days were a badge of honor. I wasn't the smartest in the room, but I was relentless. Promotions came fast. Titles stacked. I made my first million before I turned 35. Around that time, I met Sandra. She worked in nonprofit development, a bleeding heart with the patience of a saint. We were opposites in every way, which is probably why I fell so hard for her. Within 2 years, we were married. A year later, our son, Adam, was born. For a while, I really tried. I changed diapers, read bedtime stories, stayed up late helping Sandra during those brutal first months. But as Adam grew, so did my hunger for more. More clients, bigger deals, the kind of power that made you unignorable. I justified every missed dinner by telling myself it was temporary, that I was building something for them. When I kissed Adam goodbye in the morning, if he was even awake, I'd whisper, "One day, you'll understand." But understanding isn't inherited. It has to be earned. Adam's 6th birthday landed on the same day I was closing a $15 million acquisition. I told Sandra I'd be home by 6. The meeting ran late. Then there was a networking dinner. By the time I walked in with a gift I didn't even wrap, the cake had already been cut. Adam was in his pajamas, clutching a balloon, eyes swollen from crying. He looked at me and asked, "Why do you never look at me when I talk?" I froze. Sandra said nothing. She didn't need to. Her silence screamed everything. From that night forward, something cracked open between us. A quiet space grew wider with every missed bedtime, every unanswered question. I'd come home and the TV would be on, the lights dimmed, my place at the table untouched. The excuses became second nature. "I've got a call with Tokyo. This quarter is make or break. Next month, I swear, vacation, just us." But the months turned into years, and the promises aged poorly. Still, I told myself I was providing. Adam had private school, music lessons, summer camps. He wore sneakers I couldn't have dreamed of as a child, Isn't that what a father's supposed to do? Then came the year I turned 45. The company announced record-breaking profits, and I was awarded a bonus that made my head spin, enough to pay off our mortgage twice. I stood in the elevator holding the envelope, grinning like I'd just won the lottery. When I got home, Sandra was waiting. She handed me an envelope of her own. "I've already signed," she said. "The rest is up to you." It was our divorce papers. I remember laughing, thinking she was joking. But she wasn't. She had tears in her eyes, not from anger, but resignation. That's the thing about distance. It doesn't explode. It erodes, quietly, until there's nothing left but formalities. "I can't do it anymore," she whispered. "I've raised him alone, John, and I'm tired." Adam was in the next room, probably listening. I wanted to call out, to explain, to beg, but what would I say? That I was sorry for being successful? That I traded bedtime for boardrooms and couldn't find my way back? Instead, I stood there, speechless, holding two envelopes. One filled with numbers, the other with consequences. That night, I slept in the guest room. Sandra didn't even bother to close the door. The next morning, Adam avoided my gaze as he tied his shoes. I offered to drive him to school, but he shook his head. "I think Richard's coming," he said. I didn't know who Richard was yet, but I would. 2 years after the divorce, Sandra remarried. His name was Richard. He taught music at the local high school. Thin, soft-spoken, the kind of man who remembered birthdays and carried an umbrella even when the sky looked fine. I met him once, briefly, at a school recital I'd almost forgotten. He extended a hand and said, "I'm glad you could make it, John." Like he meant it. I smiled politely, but inside I hated him. Not because he was unkind, he wasn't. Not because he was Sandra's new husband. She was free to move on. No, I hated him because he was present, because he occupied the space I abandoned. Adam was 9 when Richard entered his life. At first, I thought nothing of it. I still paid for his school, covered health insurance, transferred money like clockwork. I assumed that was enough. Fathers provide, right? That's what I told myself. But one Saturday, I called to confirm our weekend visit, and Sandra said Adam had plans. "He and Richard are going fishing," she said. "They've been doing it every other weekend." "Fishing? Since when?" I tried to laugh it off. "He's never shown interest in that with me." Sandra paused. "He's different with Richard. You'd be surprised." The next time I saw Adam, he had a sunburn and a story about catching a trout this big. He talked about stringing the rod, cleaning the fish, learning patience. I nodded, pretending I was happy. But I felt something tighten in my chest. Jealousy, the raw kind that chokes you when you realize you're being replaced. Not by force, but by consistency. I started missing more weekends. Told myself I was giving Adam space. Truth was, I didn't know how to compete. I was the man who gave him gadgets and games. Richard gave him time and attention. Years passed. Adam took up piano. I didn't know. Sandra mentioned it once in an email, but I was busy. Something about recitals and a teacher who said he had real talent. I didn't reply. Then came the night that broke me in half. Adam was giving a short speech at his middle school's end-of-year event. Parents crowded the auditorium, phones raised, smiles ready. I stood in the back, late again, heart racing from traffic. He stepped to the mic. "I want to thank someone very special," he said, "for teaching me how to read music, for believing in me even when I doubted myself. Dad, this is for you." The audience clapped. I smiled. Then I saw him stand, Richard, waving slightly, beaming with pride. I froze. My face burned, my hands curled into fists. I waited for Adam to look at me, to offer a glance, a nod, some kind of acknowledgement. Nothing. His eyes went straight to Richard. That night, I drank. More than I should have. I scrolled through old photos of Adam as a baby, trying to remind myself that I was there first, that I mattered. But time doesn't care who came first, only who stayed. Later that year, I mailed Adam a birthday card. Inside was a check and a message. Proud of you. Love, Dad. He didn't cash the check. The next summer, I learned through a mutual acquaintance that Adam had applied to college using the name Adam Richards. Sandra hadn't called. No one had. It wasn't just a formality. It was a decision. He'd taken Richard's last name. I sat in my office that night staring at my phone, my fingers hovering over the keypad. I could call Sandra, demand an explanation, shout about legal rights, but what would that accomplish? He made his choice. And I wasn't even worth the courtesy of telling. I remember driving by their house one day. I don't know what I was hoping to see. Closure, maybe. A sign I still existed in some small corner of his life. Instead, I saw Adam and Richard on the front lawn, laughing, tossing a football. Just like I used to imagine we would. Richard threw too far. Adam chased it across the street. For a moment, I imagined it was me out there, just once. Not in memory. Not in guilt. But now. But I wasn't. I sat there, car idling, watching from across the street like a stranger. Because that's exactly what I'd become. The wedding invitation came late, 3 weeks before the event. A thick white envelope with gold trim. Inside, a note printed in formal script. Mr. John Carter is cordially invited to the wedding of Adam Richards and Emily Foster. Richards, not Carter. I stared at the name for a full minute, as if reading it long enough might cause it to change. But it didn't. My name was nowhere on the RSVP card, nowhere on the father of the groom list. There was a small checkbox, will you attend? I ticked yes. The ceremony was held at a vineyard an hour outside the city. It was elegant, warm, tasteful, just like Sandra would plan. Rows of white chairs lined the lawn. A string quartet played softly under the late afternoon sun. Guests smiled, glasses clinked, laughter carried on the breeze. I arrived early, hoping to catch Adam, hoping for a moment alone. But he was busy. The groomsmen stood in formation. Sandra floated across the crowd, radiant, and Richard, gray suit, perfect posture, stood by the altar, adjusting Adam's boutonniere like a real father would. I was shown to my seat. 3rd row, not the front, not the aisle. I sat in silence, hands folded. When Adam walked down with his bride, I felt a swell of something. Pride, sadness, awe. He looked so grown, so confident. He didn't glance at me once. After the vows, the officiant announced the reception. Guests moved to the banquet hall, a room filled with hanging lights, polished wood floors, and champagne towers. The microphone passed around for toasts. Best man, maid of honor. Then Adam took the mic. He looked around, eyes shining. I want to take a moment, he said, to thank someone who's meant more to me than words can express. My heart raced. I straightened in my chair. This man taught me how to be kind, how to stand tall, how to love even when it's hard. I nodded. He was talking about me. He had to be. Adam raised his glass. To Richard, the man who raised me. Applause erupted. Chairs scraped as people stood to toast. Glasses clinked. Richard, blushing, wiped his eyes and raised his own glass in return. I didn't move. I couldn't. The room blurred. My breath shortened, my stomach twisted. It wasn't the fact that Adam honored Richard. It was that I wasn't even mentioned. Not as a memory, not as a misstep, not as anything. I was a ghost. Quietly, I rose and slipped out the side door. The cold air slapped my face. I walked down the gravel path, past parked cars and flower beds, until I reached the edge of the property. My hands shook as I lit a cigarette, something I hadn't done in years. I stared at the flame. Then I pulled out my phone and called the only person I could, my college roommate, Nate. He picked up on the second ring. "John? What's up, man?" I exhaled slowly. "I just watched my son toast another man as his father." Nate didn't say anything. I wasn't mentioned, not once, not even as a joke or a side note. Still silence. "I lost him," I said. "He's gone." Then Nate cleared his throat. "John, I wasn't going to bring this up, but maybe it's time." I tensed. "Bring what up?" 3 years ago, Richard reached out to you, remember?" My mind raced. "No." "Yes. He called your office. Wanted to meet. Said he thought Adam needed you. That he was pulling away from him. He wanted you to talk to the kid. Reconnect." I blinked, trying to remember. "You told your assistant to take a message," Nate said. "Then you told me you weren't interested in co-parenting with a guy who plays clarinet for a living." The words hit like a punch. I remembered now. A vague voicemail, a scribbled note I tossed in the trash. I was busy in the middle of a merger. I had deadlines, meetings, a performance review. "He tried, John. He didn't want to replace you. He just didn't want Adam to grow up confused." I sat on a stone wall, the weight of my choices pressing down like gravity. "I could have stopped this," I whispered. "Yeah," Nate said. "Maybe. But you didn't." I hung up. The stars had started to appear. Behind me, the music played. People danced, laughed, clinked glasses. But I wasn't part of it. I was outside, alone, replaying every missed call, every ignored email, every time I'd said, maybe next month. I wasn't just a forgotten father. I was the man who walked away and never looked back. Until now. Back in my apartment, I pulled out the old wooden box I hadn't opened in years. Dust clung to the hinges. Inside were photos, hundreds of them, taken by Sandra over the course of Adam's life. I had never organized them, never labeled the backs. I just kept stuffing them in, year after year, as if proof of possession could substitute for presence. There were birthdays with balloon hats, soccer games with muddy cleats, Halloween costumes I couldn't identify anymore, and in all of them, I was nowhere. Not a single frame. I paused at one photo, Adam's high school graduation. He was standing between Sandra and Richard, smiling in his cap and gown. Richard had his hand on Adam's shoulder. I looked for me. I wasn't there. My hand trembled as I placed the photo aside. In that moment, something broke. Quietly, like the sound of old glass cracking under heat. I had failed, not just as a father, as a man. I opened my laptop and started typing. No edits, no rewrites. "Adam, I know I don't deserve much. Probably not even your time. But I'm writing to ask anyway. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Just a chance to show up now, if you'll let me. I missed too much. I see that now. But I don't want to miss everything else. I hope this letter finds you well. Dad, I sent it that night and didn't sleep. 2 days passed, then 3, then a week. Finally, a reply. It was short. John, I appreciate the note, but I don't need a second dad. I already have one. Adam. I stared at the message for a long time. He didn't call me dad. He didn't even call me father. Just John. My identity stripped to a name. I nearly deleted the email, but something stopped me. Maybe it was guilt, maybe pride, maybe that ache in my chest that refused to leave. A few days later, an envelope arrived. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Neat, formal, balanced. It was Richard's. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten in black ink. John, I've struggled for years with whether or not to write this. I never wanted to take your place. I only stepped in because there was a gap, and that gap was hurting Adam. He never stopped wanting his real father, even when he stopped saying it out loud. I can't speak for him now. He's a man. He makes his own choices. But I know one thing. If you walk away again, you'll confirm everything he fears about you. You still matter, whether you believe it or not. Don't let the past be an excuse. Be here, now. Richard. I read the letter 3 times. Then I packed a bag. The next morning, I handed in my resignation. My boss raised an eyebrow. Are you retiring? I shook my head. Just starting over. I left the corner office. The accolades, the salary, the view, none of it meant a thing anymore. I rented a 1-bedroom apartment 10 minutes from Adam's house. I didn't tell him. I didn't reach out. Not yet. I just waited, watched, hoped. Then, one Saturday, I saw them. Adam and Emily in the park, her belly round with new life. A baby. He was going to be a father, and I hadn't known. I sat on a bench half hidden by trees, watching from a distance like a ghost of my former self. Emily laughed at something Adam said, then leaned into him. He placed a hand gently on her stomach. They looked happy, peaceful, whole. I felt tears prick my eyes. This was the cycle repeating itself, and I was still outside the frame. Still the man who had left, watching someone else step in. That night I wrote again. Adam, I saw you in the park. You looked happy. You're going to be a wonderful father. I know it. I know you said you don't need a second dad. But maybe your child will need a grandfather. And if you'll let me, I'd like to be that. I won't ask again. But I'll be here. Just down the road. Anytime you're ready. John, I sealed the envelope. Walked it to his mailbox myself. I stood there for a moment, hand hovering, wondering if I should even drop it in. Then I did, and walked away. For the first time, not knowing what would happen next. 3 weeks after I dropped the letter in Adam's mailbox, I got a text. Tomorrow. 11 a.m. at the park. 20 minutes. No greeting. No signature, just coordinates. Still, I dressed like it was an interview. Pressed shirt, clean shave, new shoes. I arrived 20 minutes early and sat on a bench, trying not to look desperate. I rehearsed lines in my head, deleted them, rehearsed again. Adam showed up at exactly 11. He didn't smile, didn't offer a handshake, just nodded and sat. Hey, he said. Hey. The first few minutes were agony. We talked about the weather, the park renovations, local taxes, nothing real, nothing sharp, just surface talk. He checked his watch after 10 minutes. I panicked. I'm proud of you, I blurted. He looked at me. Not harshly, just tired. Thanks. We sat in silence. Birds chirped. Somewhere a kid squealed in laughter. Your mom says you're still playing piano, I offered. A little. Your own compositions? He hesitated, then nodded. Some. I'd love to hear them sometime, I said. He didn't respond. After exactly 20 minutes, he stood. Thanks for meeting me, he said. Of course. Then he walked away. I didn't expect a hug. I didn't expect forgiveness. I only hoped it wasn't the last time. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, he texted again. Coffee, Tuesday, 30 mins, and then dinner, then a walk. Our conversation stayed stiff for a while, like two men learning a language neither had spoken in years. But slowly, pieces softened. He asked about my new apartment. I asked about Emily. He told me about his job in tech, something I barely understood but pretended to follow. Then came the moment that shook me. He texted, "Come by the house Saturday. There's someone I want you to meet." I arrived nervous, palms sweating. Emily answered the door, smiling politely. Inside, the walls were warm with baby photos, laughter echoing from the living room. Adam walked in holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blue. "This is Jonathan," he said. "Your grandson." I blinked. My throat tightened. "Jonathan?" I asked, voice cracking. Adam nodded. "Yeah. You named him after me?" He shrugged. We both liked the name. But I saw it in his eyes. It wasn't random. He placed the baby in my arms. I'd held stock portfolios heavier than this child. He stared up at me, wide-eyed, trusting, unaware of all the history packed into that room. "I don't know what to say," I whispered. "You don't have to," Adam said. "Just be here." We sat in silence. The good kind. The kind that feels like home. A few weeks later, Adam invited me to join a barbecue at their house. I almost declined, unsure if I belonged. But I went. That day, I met Richard again. He was flipping burgers, apron-stained, a bottle of beer in hand. When he saw me, he smiled. "Glad you came." I nodded stiffly. "Thanks for inviting me." We stood next to each other in awkward silence for a minute before I cleared my throat. "I got your letter," I said. He nodded. "Figured you might. I appreciate what you said about not replacing me." He sipped his beer. I wasn't lying. We both looked over at Adam, who was tossing a ball to Jonathan, making the baby laugh. Richard glanced at me. "He's doing good, huh?" I nodded. "Better than I deserve." Richard turned to me. "Let me say this once. You being here now, it matters. Don't let the past trick you into thinking you don't count." I stared at him. The man I once resented. Now. I didn't know. I didn't feel jealousy. I felt relief. Gratitude, even. Later that day, Emily handed her phone to someone and asked for a family picture. She called out, "Come on, 3 generations!" Adam grabbed Jonathan. Richard stood on one side, Emily the other. I hesitated. Then Adam waved me over. "You too, Dad?" Dad. He said it like it had never been missing. I stood between Richard and Adam with Jonathan in front. The shutter clicked. And for the first time in over 2 decades, I was in the picture. Literally, emotionally, fully. 6 months after the barbecue, I launched the Carter Field Scholarship, named after Sandra, my ex-wife and Adam's mother. It was a small fund, barely enough for 2 students per year, aimed at helping children of single parents who wanted to study music. I never told Sandra. I didn't need to. She wouldn't care about the plaque or the press release. But I wanted Adam to know that I hadn't forgotten who held it all together when I didn't. The scholarship was just the beginning. In the quiet evenings of my small apartment, I started writing. Not a journal, not a letter. A book. I called it Raising Late. Each chapter peeled back a layer of regret, a moment lost, a decision made too fast or too selfishly. I didn't dress anything up. I didn't try to sound noble or wise. I just told the truth. How I chose profit over presence. How I missed first steps, first heartbreaks, first everything. How another man, gentler, more patient, had stepped into the role I'd abandoned. But also, how it wasn't too late to matter. The writing was slow. Some nights I cried more than I typed. But I finished it. Printed 10 early copies. Gave one to Adam, wrapped in brown paper, with a note that simply said, "If you ever wonder how I got here, this is everything." A week passed. No response. Then one night, as I was rinsing dishes, my phone buzzed. A message from Adam. "I just finished your book." Nothing else. Then another ping. I cried 3 times, and not because you failed, but because you're trying. I'm proud to be your son, too. I sat down at the table and stared at the screen, unable to breathe. Not from sadness, from release. For the first time in over 30 years, I felt forgiven. Not by a word, but by a bridge rebuilt. Strong enough for both of us to walk across. We saw each other more after that. No agendas, no awkward silences, just simple human moments. Watching Jonathan roll over, laughing at his first attempts to talk. Adam and I played chess in the evenings. Sometimes we didn't even finish the games. It didn't matter. Then came Father's Day. Adam invited me over for lunch. When I arrived, Richard was already there, flipping hot dogs on the grill, wearing an apron that read, "World's Okayest Cook." Emily waved from the porch. Jonathan, now waddling, tottered over to me with open arms. "Papa!" he shouted. It wasn't quite Grandpa, but I'd take it. We ate under a string of paper lanterns in their backyard. Nothing fancy, just potato salad, burgers, lemonade, and warmth. The kind of day I used to think was boring. Now it felt like wealth. After dessert, Adam stood and clinked his glass with a fork. "Before we call it a day, I have something for you both," he said. He handed Richard and me matching boxes. Inside each was a navy blue t-shirt. Mine said, "Raised by 2 dads, loved by both." His said the same. I couldn't speak. I looked at Richard. His eyes were wet too. Then Adam put his arm around both of us. "I used to think I had to pick between you," he said. "But now I know. I didn't have to choose. I just had to be grateful." I held the shirt to my chest and nodded. Words failed, but gratitude didn't. As the sun dipped behind the trees, I sat back and watched my son chase his own son through the grass. I looked at Richard, older now, grayer, but still the steady presence he'd always been. And I smiled. We were no longer rivals, no longer ghosts, just 2 men who loved the same boy and now the same grandson. Legacy isn't what you leave in your will. It's what you build in the cracks, the tiny moments, the quiet redemptions, the showing up, and that's what I'd finally done. For years, I thought I was too late. But looking around that table, feeling my grandson's hand in mine, hearing my son's voice call me Dad again, I knew. I had arrived, right on time.